to align the X and Y axis, one thing I want you to notice is how floppy the head is, okay? You see how it's leaning this way? And it's very loose. That's why we backed out the adjustment screws and the spring plungers earlier, so that none of this stuff would impinge on our ability to align it relative to the transport base. So the first thing we will do is we will take our 9/64ths and back this stock collar completely off, well, loosen it, and then spin it all the way up, oops, out of the way. Okay? So we have unlimited, well, not unlimited, but we have maximum Z up and down motion. The next thing we will do is take the shipping cap off, and the third thing we will do is utilize a piece of paper as essentially shim stock. If you do not have a cut sheet transport like I do, ensure that your web-based transport, for example, has a platen or something solid underneath the head on which you can rest this piece of paper and rest the head as well. So what we do now is we will, again I'm adjusting my camera, give me 1 second. We will essentially utilize the paper as a shim to determine when the head has touched down, if you will. So while I'm rolling the head down, I am moving the paper back and forth so I can feel when it begins to drag. And it will drag first on this side over here because of that lean. So it's going to start dragging here in a second. There it goes. It's dragging right now. Okay, it's clamped on that side. Now, you want to roll the head down further, and you will see this part of the head fall down, and you'll see the x-axis tilt backwards. And let me show you what that looks like up here. So as the head comes down, you'll see the x-axis move. For example, in exaggerated detail. See how it's moving into position? Okay? Now, looking at this from the y-axis perspective, you can see that it will touch on the right side first, right there. Right there. And as you roll the head down further, you can see this near side, right here, start to wind down as well. And as soon as it touches, that's parallel. Leave everything alone at that point in time. Because now the x-axis and the y-axis are roughly parallel with your transport. Now you'll take your adjustment screw, hex key, 5/32, and spin in X until it just touches the spring block. As soon as you feel it stop, that's good. Same thing on the y-axis. And what you're looking for, hopefully I can get this in frame, is you're looking for that to just touch the stainless steel plate. Like that. Finally, what you want to do, preferably with a partner, is have them apply pressure this way against it, against that y-axis stop, while you spin in the spring plungers. And I will show you a close-up of that once I have this one spun in, what it should look like. An aid that might help is to spin in the z-axis, even though we will be adjusting that further in a bit. Spin in the z-axis adjuster until it touches the spring plate, and that helps as well. We apply a little counter pressure, spin the plunger in until it bottoms on the plate, and then back it off about a full turn. Same thing with the upper spring plunger. Spin that in until it bottoms, and then back it off about a half a turn or a full turn. And let me show you what that looks like. So if this is not touching at all, and you rotate this spring plunger in until it starts to compress, it will compress and then just touch that spring plate. And then you want to back it off about a full turn. If you look down here on the bottom spring adjuster, it's the same way. The same general amount of compression. The spring plungers do not really get into their compression rate until they're fully compressed. I'll do the same thing here with this one. Okay, so now, when you lift the head up, it should be far more rigid than it was. Okay? And that gets you roughly parallel in X and Y. Next, we'll talk about Z. For this step of aligning Z, the first thing we want to do is turn on the iM2, make sure there's an Ethernet connection back to the control computer, and we will want to wait for the iM2 to boot up, and then go to File, Find Imagers. That will search for the iM2. As you can see, this one's been found. Click OK. That establishes TCP communication with the print head. The next thing we'll want to do is we'll want to go to iM2 Status tab, and we'll want to go to Enable the IDS. If you do all that and you press the purge button, you should hear the pump activate. If the pump doesn't activate when you press the purge button, it's likely that you didn't actually activate the IDS, the ink delivery system. Once this is warmed up, it takes about 7 minutes. We'll talk about performing a first test print and starting to align the Z-axis. During this alignment phase, one of the things you will want to have at your disposal is either a microscope, which we happen to have, or a loop, so you can look at the alignment pattern itself. The alignment pattern, we can discuss that while we're doing this, is, let me create a new job. And we will go here, we will add a bitmap, which is this icon right here. We will go into the iM2 default folder. We will go into Samples, Bitmaps, and Alignment Master. And we will click Open, and that will put this pattern on your screen. You'll probably want to move this to the left a little bit so it's in the middle of your form. We happen to use 9 1/4 inch wide forms here at Norwix. So I'll set this to custom. And then I'll set my form width on the Imager Setup tab to 9.25. Also, when you print this pattern, you will want the resolution at 600 dpi horizontal by single drop. And now we'll just wait for the heaters to come up to temperature. So here we'll go over the iM2 purge procedure. As we discussed previously, the iM2 is powered on. We came over to the GUI and we found the imager. We're going to File, Find Imagers, which returns a result, in this case, a single head. Click OK to establish communication, and then we enabled the IDS. As you can see, for this given ink, which is PUP 1140, our temperatures are 45 and 45 degrees C, respectively, which you can set up, by the way, right here. Go to Properties for that imager, and you set the temperatures in these two areas, and then click on OK. So now that we're warmed up, and we're up to temperature, and our IDS is on, our purge button works, we can do the purge procedure. And what you want to see when you press the purge button is you want to see nice solid droplets of ink. This happens to be an older head, so the ink droplets aren't as well formed as they would be on a brand new head, but this is the general idea. What you don't want to see is air. And after you do that, you wait a minute. Make sure your drip tray is under there, obviously, and the cap is removed, otherwise you're going to make a mess. Then what you want to do, for this stage, you'll want to have tech wipes, and then after we do this, we'll do the alignment. You'll want to have your 5/32 wrench and your flat blade screwdriver. For the wipe, after you purge out the ink in the system, you'll want to take a wipe, and this is hard to do, again, with just me filming, so bear with me. You take a wipe, you fold it in half, you fold that in half, and you fold it in half one more time. So it looks like that. Then what you want to do is take this wipe over here and move the ink tray out of the way, and then put the wipe on the whole head, applying medium pressure to it. Now you can hear the pump kick on, and you want to leave the wipe on there for a couple seconds after the pump kicks on, then drop down one side like this, and slowly, with medium pressure, pull across all 4 columns. Then you'll want to flip the wipe to a clean side, apply it to the end with medium pressure again, and then slowly pull across. Finally, flip the wipe over to another clean side, and then with very light and very quick swipe, you just want to do that. After you do that, you examine the ink pressure light, and it should stay a nice solid green. That's this light right here. If this light is flickering between red and green, perform that wipe procedure again. If it's red, hold the wipe on the head again like we did, until it turns green, and then perform the wipe procedure. Now the head should be fundamentally ready to print with. Because we didn't set it when we did the X and Y alignment previously, we will bring the head down onto a piece of paper. And again, while we're doing this, what we want to do is we want to be moving the paper back and forth while we're bringing the head down. I can't do that because I'm holding the camera. So I bring it down to touch and then slide it. You shouldn't feel any drag at all, and you want to have probably another millimeter on top of that of clearance. So that's, this is hard to film. So that's probably a little low. That, I think, looks a little high. So right around there is about where you want it. And that should be, again, nice and clear. Again, we bring the head down to there to touch. And then we roll it back a little bit until it's about 1 or 2 millimeters off the paper. Make sure we've got plenty of clearance. And what we want to do is spin the stop collar down to the mount until it touches. And rotate it back and take our hex key and tighten up the stop collar. And we've got our stop permanently set. Finally, make sure that your head is aligned the way you want it relative to your in-feed mechanism. Turn on the transport, and we'll go over here and we will start the job. Again, we want this pattern loaded, okay, with a 600 dpi horizontal by 1 drop pattern for the waveform, and we will start printing. Then we will take our first alignment pattern print. From this, you can see that our wipe was not very successful because we have a couple of columns that are out. So we will wipe again and then reprint. After performing a wipe on the head from our previous print, which was this one, what had happened was the head was a little flooded with ink, so I had to perform another wipe, and this is the result after that wipe. As you can see here, this section of the pattern will show nozzle outs. These two lines in the middle, here and here, are just an alignment mismatch. It has nothing to do with the head printing. But this pattern will show you nozzle outs in a very clear definition, like right here, for example, is an example of a nozzle out. This one, right there, that's a nozzle out. Now that we have done this alignment pattern and we have all of our nozzles, what we want to do is utilize some sort of device like a microscope and or a loop and examine the output of that print. And if you give me 1 second to align this, you can see on the microscope output, you see how this line here, this first little line, is lower than this horizontal reference line, and that's in this part of the pattern. This is a very important part of the pattern as well as the text. This line being lower, let me see if I can get a little better. Okay, I think that's a little better. Let me see if I can bring it into focus. There we go. You can see that that first line down, this is a horizontal reference line every 16 pixels, and this is the first step down. And I'll print this on some high gloss paper so you can really see it well. Here it is on some high gloss paper. And we're just aligning it under the microscope for a bit. Okay. Now you can see, you see how much lower this line is than this line? This line should actually look like this one. It should be touching this horizontal reference. And when this line is lower than the horizontal reference line, you want to turn the Z adjustment screw clockwise. When this line is higher, you want to turn the Z adjustment screw counterclockwise. And the reason why is, if you look at the head, what that print is showing you is that this head is actually tilted this way. It's rotated this way a little bit, okay? So to compensate for that, you want to bring the Z-axis screw to bear more on the spring plate, which will push it out. When you make adjustments to the Z-axis, it's important to note that you really only want to turn it about 1/8 of a turn. And you also want to make sure that you're touching the spring plate before you start rotating it, before you start adjusting it. So that's where the position of the Allen key is. I'll turn it about that far, and then I'll run another print. Using high gloss paper is beneficial. This just happens to be like a coated paper. You can see the shimmer on it, because it, unlike regular porous paper, it won't absorb the ink. You'll get high definition images out of it. So we adjusted the Z-axis. We'll run another print. And then we will go and examine it under the microscope again, or the loop, whatever you happen to have. And you can see that from one to the other, it moved very slightly. I don't think that's 100% touching the spring plate, so we'll adjust it again. Again, clockwise, because we need to bring that line up. So we'll adjust it a little more. We'll run another piece of paper. And we'll put this under the microscope as well. And what you can see is the line is slowly starting to move upwards. We're almost there. So we'll adjust the Z-axis again, about another 1/8 of a turn or so. The reason you want to move in small increments on the Z-axis is because it's very easy to over-adjust. We'll run another piece of paper. Put this under the microscope. And as you can see, it's coming closer and closer. So we'll do one more adjustment. We'll make sure, the other thing to check when you're making these adjustments is that the spring plungers are not bottomed out. So you want to make sure they have space to move, because those are the counter adjusters. So when you adjust it, you want to make sure it's not bottoming out, because you won't actually be adjusting the Z-axis. You'll be bending, or not bending, but you'll be putting pressure on the spring plate as opposed to adjusting the axis. There we go. Okay, so this is what a properly aligned step-down pattern looks like. You can see we brought that line into contact, and I will try and slide this across so you can see the whole thing from the top. So there you can see more of the step pattern, and finally the end of the step pattern. Now, a way to verify this as well, that the alignment is good, is to put your loop over the text area, and that's what your text should look like when the head is properly aligned. So now that the head is properly aligned, we can go here and finally adjust this lock screw, this lock adjuster, and bring it in until it just touches the spring plate and no further. Just put a little tension on it so it just touches the plate. And that is it. That's how you align and purge an iM2 head.